This photo was taken by a colleague of a judge ruling on one of my motions right before they took me out of litigation. It was a scary day, but it was a memorable day. Now, some things you should never do. If we have another video. Okay, we are giving you a lot. We're giving you a lot of gray areas, things you should watch out for, things you should be mindful of. The one absolute I want to leave you with is, regardless of how well or how badly your case is going, do not do what this attorney in a scene from the New York criminal courts has opted to do.
The prosecution is not going to get that man today. No. Because I'm going to get him. My client, the Honorable Henry T. Fleming, should go right to jail for some of our nothing more out of order. Not out of order. You're out of order. The whole trial is out of order. They're out of order. That man, that's crazy.
Court system. It is not good to scream and yell at the judge that the judge is out of order, even if your case is going badly. Notwithstanding the clear ethical violation of telling everyone in open court that his client did commit the rape and murder, not a good thing to admit that on behalf of your client, no matter how upset you may be.
I had a good friend of mine go up and slap his client, a criminal defense client, and say, "I'm sure the jury wants to do this to my client." And then he argued, but he doesn't really deserve it. But that got around the courthouse for a while, and a number of the judges told him, don't do that again. That is just not the way you want to handle your client, and I think you can bring a mistrial after that.
Okay, with respect to your difficult judges, don't start off by going, has Your Honor had the chance to read the materials on this motion? Not a good thing to ask. First of all, why would you ask that? Because automatically you're going to put that judge on the defensive. And from a substantive point of view, what happens if that judge were inclined to rule for your client? It's now out on the record that maybe he or she did not have the chance to review the materials, thereby giving a great avenue of appeal to your adversary. Assume the judge hasn't read the materials. Start your argument. The judge will interrupt you, hopefully politely, and say, "Counsel, I'm aware from the submissions about points A, B, and C. What I would like you to address is point D of your adversary's submission." So while you don't want to challenge the court, assume the court maybe has not read the papers in as thorough a manner as it should have, allowing the court to correct your course of action as you argue. What about the rude or abusive judge? You saw the rude judge in that clip. How do you deal with that?
You let him win.
You let him win. That's sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. Your Honor?
Yeah, let me win, please. I'll tell you what, and I've said this and I say it all the time. I'm as human as you are, and I can make mistakes. And if I've read everything, I'll tell you I've read everything. If I haven't read everything, I'll tell you I haven't read everything either. And if you think that, as Brendan's indicated, the judge has missed the point, you can always very politely say, "Excuse me, Judge, if I can clarify something that may be a little intricate in this particular issue that we've been discussing that I think that maybe you've misconstrued." I'm more than willing to hear that than the guy that says, "Well, you blew that. I'm just going to have the people down the street look at it." You know what I'm saying? I mean, those are two ends of the spectrum. But the first way will get the judge refocused. You'll be more effective.
Right, and going back again to the Travolta clip, where he pretty much was signaling he knew he was going to lose in that court. Unbeknownst to him, and prejudging the judge, he did not realize that the judge was inclined to rule in his favor. One thing you should never, or I would recommend you never do, again in absolute, is, well, I can see the court's already made up its mind. I guess I can leave now. Or statements akin to that. Not a good way to approach the court. And also, it obviates the opportunity for you to make an argument on a point that may not have been fully briefed or as clearly briefed as you would have liked. Why alienate the person who is going to be making that ruling? If they seem dismissive of you, if they seem rude, that should signal to you to remain calmer, politer, as your colleague said. Make your argument to the extent you can make the argument, and keep that record as clear as you possibly can. Oops, the gladiator judge. Let me just address that. That's the judge who doesn't realize he's not in the well anymore. And you're asking questions, and that judge, he or she decides they're going to ask that killer question for you. Because you're obviously too inept to have asked that question. Not realizing that your case strategy dictates that you stay away from that area of inquiry. And you become very deflated considering you have now spent 3 weeks coming up with your case strategy and your line of questioning for this very difficult witness, only to have the judge who believes he or she should be arguing the case for you weigh in and say, Mr. Smith, where were you before you did see the accident? Which is an area of inquiry you wanted to stay completely away from because Mr. Smith was in Hoboken. And we all know what's in Hoboken, don't we? A lot of bars. So that will happen. You will have the gladiator judge. Sometimes the judge will take over the whole line of questioning. In New Jersey recently, we had that in 2 serious criminal cases. In both cases, the individual was convicted. And in both cases, our Supreme Court said the judge usurped the role of the adversarial system by becoming the second prosecutor in the room. What can you do? Diplomatically, delicately say, Your Honor, we'll be moving to that area of inquiry, or Your Honor, we would like to move beyond into this area, bearing in mind that sometimes you're not going to be able to control that gladiator.
The movie The Verdict. You recall what Paul Newman said to Milos Forman? He said, Judge, if you're going to try my case, I appreciate that you don't lose it. The better tack would have been, Judge, may we approach and have a bench conference for a moment on the issue and say, Judge, I had an entirely different way of coming at this issue with a different set of evidence, a different witness, and if I could be allowed to pursue it in that fashion, I think I'll satisfy what your questions are. Better way.
Okay, these are relatively self-explanatory. We've talked about it. They're just up there for your reference. Again, preparation, be adaptive, know your judge, have that situational awareness. What is this judge like with respect to in limine motions before trial? Is this judge inclined to hear substantive arguments during the course of the trial? Will he or she ask or will entertain a directed verdict motion? Or do you know, as a matter of fact, that they, out of 300 cases they've tried, they have yet to grant a directed verdict motion? So you might want to rethink how you act, how you react, and not push the issue and wind up possibly alienating that judge because you have not laid that groundwork. Always be adaptive and as flexible as you can.
In our jurisdiction, we made an amendment to Rule 7 regarding motions and added Rule 7.2 regarding motions in limine. And, because motions in limine never appeared anywhere in any of the civil rules. And a committee of myself and 5 other people drafted this rule, which requires the attorneys to talk to each other before our final pretrial conference, figure out what motions in limine are necessary. If they're not necessary because no one's going to go into a particular area, then don't file it because I don't need to read something that's not an issue. But I also tell attorneys, if you have the type of issue that goes beyond evidence but is more substantive, file that motion in limine months before trial, because that'll help you in your trial preparation. It may get the case settled depending on the outcome of the ruling, and we won't be going crazy having expired trial at trial, in the middle of trial, on a substantive issue.
And the points on this slide are all ones we've discussed. Remember, it is a one-sided contest between you and the court. And unlike David, you are not going to slay Goliath in most courtrooms. So again, polite, firm, seek clarification when clarification is necessary. But don't unnecessarily challenge the court with respect to a ruling, with respect to a decision. There will be other days, other forums, other witnesses where you can address any shortcomings of what that judge did or didn't do at that particular time. The hardest thing for us as attorneys is we were told all through law school, we're teaching all these big lawyer words so you can impress your clients and you can impress the courts and you can impress others. We don't like to listen. We're not good listeners. We're not active listeners. We tend in our profession not to listen and, more importantly, react upon what we hear. And that's critical, especially dealing with a judge who may be difficult. If you know that this judge is giving you one terse response after another to requests you're making, well, maybe it's time to sit down and deal with those issues either through your witnesses, through other evidence, or if all else fails, through the appellate process.
My favorite saying to lawyers is, lawyers understand completely how to argue, but they have some problems with knowing how to talk. This is still true. In talking to each other through everything we've talked about this morning, if you're able to talk to each other without necessarily arguing, you get more done, it seems to me. And when addressing the court, I'm going to try to talk to you. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to ask you to be objective for a moment so that you don't continue to argue with me and not know how to end it. Okay? Because sometimes if you can understand the position of the person that's in the road, you'll understand that beating that dead horse is futile. I will not tell you that we have judges who can never be unreasonable. There's no question we have judges that can be unreasonable. But knowing that, because they have a reputation as well. The judges that can be who are unreasonable are the ones who are as well known as the lawyers who are unreasonable. Put that in your toolkit. Go into court being prepared to be able to soothe that judge's mentality, if you will. Okay. It'll make you more effective.
And the judge alludes to something important. The judges that we as attorneys or we as litigators tend to have the most respect for and the most ease in presenting our cases are those who are predictable judges. Those are the judges you know how they want things done in their courtroom, when they want to hear it, how they want to hear it, when they break for recess, how they want witnesses treated, how they want their jury treated. Often, you're going to deal with that unpredictable judge who, through no animus towards you, no animus towards your office, is just difficult to figure out. And that sometimes unduly complicates our lives. And that, unfortunately, is something we have to deal with and adjust, often being adaptive and flexible, as we alluded to earlier. Now, on the could versus should. Now you're going to kill the best scene now. You killed it in Michigan, now you're going to kill it here. Okay, again, we talk could versus should throughout the course of today, and I want to leave you with a video clip. Not from my cousin Vinny, those of you who are Vinny fans, I apologize in advance. But from the movie To Kill a Mockingbird, bearing in mind that Gregory Peck has just lost a hotly contested piece of litigation in the Deep South in the 1930s, where the defendant was an African-American male, the alleged victim was a white female. And this scene is probably the most powerful scene I've ever seen in a legal movie. And with that, yeah, if this doesn't work, I might hope you can die. Good stuff. We would all like to have that type of reaction from the people in the courtroom. It's something, again, to give you something aspirational. I can assure you I've never had such a gracious exit from courtroom, Your Honor. Okay, thank you all, and thank you for inviting us. It's been a pleasure.